When Keanu Reeves walks into a high-end bank wearing simple clothes, no one gives him a second glance, except a judgmental staff. They barely acknowledge him. The customers exchange knowing smirks, and the teller at the counter, he doesn't even try to hide his disdain. But Keanu isn't here to impress anyone. He just wants to make a withdrawal. The banker, Ryan, laughs under his breath, already convinced that this ordinary man doesn't belong. He toys with Keanu's black card, barely taking it seriously, ready to send him on his way. What happens next? Well, let's just say in a matter of minutes, Ryan will go from arrogant to speechless. The entire bank will fall silent, and by the time Keanu walks out the door, nothing will ever be the same again. But how does it all unfold? And what will Ryan see on the screen that changes everything? Stay with us until the end to find out. Oh, and before we continue, tell us where you are watching this from. We love reading your comments. The clock read 2:37 p.m. when Keanu Reeves pushed through the revolving doors of one of the city's most exclusive banks. Inside, the atmosphere was a display of luxury and formality. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The marble floors gleamed under the warm lighting, and impeccably dressed bankers smiled only at customers they deemed worthy of their attention. Keanu didn't seem to belong there, wearing a simple black t-shirt, worn-out jeans, and a cap that had seen better days. He walked in without haste, heading straight toward the service counter. He wasn't carrying an expensive leather briefcase, nor was he sporting a gleaming watch on his wrist. To the untrained eye, he could have been mistaken for a tourist, or perhaps someone who had walked in by mistake. As he moved forward, heads subtly turned in his direction. Whispered conversations broke out among the well-dressed clients waiting in line. A man in a navy blue suit exchanged glances with his wife. Furrowing his brows, an older woman clutched her Prada purse a little tighter, as if instinctively protecting it. At the main counter, a young and well-groomed banker noticed Keanu approaching. His name was Thomas, and he was accustomed to dealing only with select customers. His eyes flicked over the man standing before him, and without hesitation, he adopted a tone of impatient authority. "Sir, the line for regular customers is at the back of the branch," he gestured dismissively, as one might wave off a beggar at the door. Keanu paused for a moment. His calm gaze met the banker's. There was no anger, no indignation, just a serene expression, as if he had encountered this kind of treatment before. "I just need to make a withdrawal." Thomas let out a short, dry chuckle, shaking his head. "A withdrawal," he repeated, looking Keanu up and down. "Are you sure you even have an account here? Because this bank doesn't deal with just anyone?" The silence that followed was deafening. Some clients pretended not to pay attention, but it was clear they were waiting to see how this would unfold. A teller in the back covered a small smirk with her hand. Keanu remained composed. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. With a slow, deliberate motion, he placed it on the counter. Thomas took the card with disdain, treating it like just another piece of plastic. He swiped it through the system, expecting something to go wrong, maybe an insufficient balance, an inactive account. But what he saw on the screen would drain the color from his face entirely. But what that banker didn't know was that in just a few minutes, he would make the mistake that would lead to the most humiliating moment of his career. The atmosphere inside the bank had shifted. What had started as a routine afternoon had transformed into something far more tense. Conversations had halted. Smiles had disappeared. The subtle glances toward Keanu Reeves were filled with judgment and condescension. At the counter, Ryan, the well-groomed banker, who prided himself on distinguishing truly wealthy clients from mere pretenders, held the black card in his hands, inspecting it with clear disdain. He smirked, tossing the card onto the counter like it was nothing but a piece of cheap plastic. "So, are you sure you even have an account here, sir?" He asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Keanu simply gave a calm nod. Ryan chuckled, crossing his arms. "All right then, what can I do for you?" "A withdrawal." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "A withdrawal?" He let out a short laugh. "All right, and how much are we talking about?" Keanu remained composed. "Enough." Ryan let out a dramatic sigh, as if this entire situation was a massive inconvenience. He glanced around, noticing that others in the bank were now watching the scene unfold. That only encouraged him. "Sir, listen to me," Ryan lowered his voice, as if offering some kind of friendly advice. "I really don't want to embarrass you, but this is an exclusive bank. We don't just serve anyone who walks in off the street. A well-dressed woman in the line adjusted the Prada bag on her shoulder, letting out a quiet giggle. Her husband exchanged a knowing glance with Ryan, as if they all shared an unspoken understanding. This man didn't belong here. But Keanu remained unmoved. Ryan sighed again. All right, fine. He picked up the card, turning it over in his fingers. I'll run it through the system, but just so we're clear, if this card gets declined or doesn't match a valid account, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. The banker smiled, believing he was still in complete control. Keanu gave another slow nod, completely unfazed. That's fine. Ryan raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised at the lack of resistance. He enjoyed it when customers started scrambling to explain themselves. But this man showed no signs of worry. No matter. Without hesitation, Ryan swiped the card through the machine. The system began processing. And that was when everything changed. Ryan looked at the screen. His smug smile vanished instantly. His jaw slackened slightly before he quickly clenched it shut. His breath caught in his throat for just a second. He blinked once, twice. This couldn't be right. He checked again and again. The color drained from his face. The arrogance that had filled his expression moments ago completely erased. His hand trembled slightly as he gripped the mouse, his eyes darting across the screen, as if willing the numbers to change. But there was no mistake. Ryan, a nearby banker called, noticing his sudden change in demeanor. Ryan swallowed hard. The silence that followed was deafening. The customers began to notice something was wrong. The same man who had just been mocking Keanu now looked as though he had seen a ghost. His gaze darted to the side, desperately searching for a way out of this. But there was none. That was when the bank manager, a distinguished middle-aged man in a perfectly tailored gray suit, noticed the disturbance and walked over. Ryan, is there a problem? The banker hesitated. He didn't want to answer, but he had no choice. Slowly, he turned the computer screen toward the manager. The man leaned in to look, and the moment he saw the numbers on the screen, his face froze as well. The manager's reaction did not go unnoticed. The customers who had been watching the situation discreetly were now openly invested in whatever was happening. What could possibly have caused such a reaction? The banker, Ryan, was now motionless. The manager, on the other hand, nervously adjusted his tie. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. Keanu, still silent, observed everything with patience. Ryan was sweating now. This has to be a mistake, he muttered under his breath. The manager double-checked the numbers. No, it was no mistake. More than anything he had ever seen, this was absolutely real. And now everyone around them could feel the tension building. What's going on? One of the customers in line whispered. The woman with the Prada bag was now clutching its strap tightly, suddenly unsure if she had just misjudged the situation completely. The silence in the bank became overwhelming. And then finally the manager took a deep breath and turned to Ryan. Serve Mr. Reeves properly now. Ryan swallowed hard. He could feel the weight of 100 eyes on him. Slowly he turned back to Keanu. All the arrogance in his voice was gone. Mr. Reeves, he stammered. But before he could continue, Keanu finally broke his silence. So if my name was written on my cap, would I have been treated differently? Ryan froze. The weight of those words hit like a hammer. What could he possibly say? There was no answer. Behind him, the manager shifted uncomfortably. He knew this moment was about to turn into a public relations nightmare for the bank. Keanu didn't look angry. He didn't need to be. The truth had already been revealed. And now everyone in the bank knew exactly what had just happened. And Ryan, he knew that he would never forget this moment for the rest of his life. And at that moment, Ryan realized he hadn't just underestimated a customer, he had just destroyed his own reputation in front of everyone. The weight of silence pressed down on the entire bank. Ryan, who had spent the last several minutes mocking and belittling the man standing before him, was now visibly pale. His arrogant smirk was long gone, replaced by a nervous gulp. His hands trembled slightly as they hovered over the keyboard. The entire bank was watching. Some people in the queue had even stopped pretending to be discreet. They openly leaned in, waiting to see what would happen next. The manager stood frozen behind Ryan, his jaw clenched, as if bracing for impact. Keanu Reeves, the man who had walked in with no flashy suit, no luxury watch, no entourage, remained calm as ever, but make no mistake, he was in complete control now. Ryan swallowed hard and looked at the screen again. He had already seen the insane balance in Keanu's account, but his brain refused to accept it. So he did what any panicked, desperate person would do. He checked again and again. He even refreshed the system. But no matter how many times he tried, the numbers remained the same, and they were far beyond anything he had ever seen before. The reality of the situation finally crashed down on Ryan like a collapsing building. His breath hitched. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. His entire career flashed before his eyes. Ryan had seen some big accounts before, clients with six, maybe even seven-figure balances. Those people were always treated with immediate respect. But this was something else entirely. 322 million, he blinked. The number didn't change. 322 million. Ryan had spent the last 10 minutes publicly mocking and disrespecting a man whose wealth was beyond his comprehension. And now every second that passed only made his humiliation worse. The manager, who had been watching silently, finally snapped into action. He stepped forward, clearing his throat, trying to salvage what was left of this disaster. "Mr. Reeves, we sincerely apologize for any inconvenience." His voice trembled slightly. He knew the damage had already been done, but he had to trump. "If we had known it was you, we would have." Keanu finally looked up and met the manager's gaze, and the older man froze mid-sentence because Keanu's expression, though still calm, held an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't angry, but that was worse because a man like Keanu Reeves didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. The truth was already echoing across the room. The silence was suffocating. Ryan, still seated behind the counter, could feel the eyes of every single person in the bank piercing into him. He had humiliated one of the wealthiest men he had ever served. He had mocked him in front of an audience, and now that audience was judging him. Whispers had spread through the bank. Customers who had laughed at Keanu earlier now looked at him in a new light, with a mix of respect and guilt. And Ryan, he was drowning in shame. He finally managed to stutter out a few words. "Mr. Reeves, would you like to continue with your transaction?" Keanu studied him for a moment, and then finally he spoke. "Tell me, Ryan." Ryan's stomach twisted. Keanu leaned in slightly. "If my name had been written on my cap, would you have treated me differently?" Ryan had no words, because they both knew the answer, and so did everyone else in the bank. Ryan lowered his gaze, his cheeks burning with shame. He couldn't even look Keanu in the eye. The manager quickly stepped in again, desperate to fix the situation. "Mr. Reeves, allow me to personally assist you in our VIP lounge." Keanu's gaze remained locked on Ryan, but then slowly he reached forward and took his black card back from Ryan's trembling hands. Then, with the same quiet dignity he had maintained the entire time, he turned and walked away. The silence in the bank is deafening as Keanu walked toward the exit. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Even the sound of the marble floors beneath his footsteps seemed too loud in the wake of what had just happened. And as he reached the door, he paused for just a moment, and then, without turning around, he said one last thing. "Your bank should treat people with respect, no matter what they wear." And with that, he walked out the door, leaving the bank in complete, stunned silence. And from that day forward, everyone in that bank would remember the lesson Keanu Reeves had just taught them forever. The heavy glass doors of the bank swung shut behind Keanu Reeves, but the weight of his final words lingered like a storm cloud over everyone inside. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The silence that filled the room was thicker than ever before. A silence loaded with regret, shame, and the unmistakable feeling that something monumental had just happened. Ryan, the arrogant banker who had mocked Keanu just minutes earlier, remained frozen behind the counter. His face was ashen, his mouth slightly open, as if struggling to find words, any words, that could undo what had just happened. But there were none. He had disrespected and humiliated a man whose wealth was beyond his comprehension. And worse, he had done it in front of an entire bank full of witnesses. The bank manager, who had tried in vain to salvage the situation, was the first to move. He took a deep breath and straightened his tie, his sharp eyes darting to Ryan. "Come with me." The words were quiet, but the command in them was undeniable. Ryan swallowed hard. He didn't argue, didn't even attempt to explain himself. Because what could he say? He stood from his chair like a man walking toward a death sentence and followed the manager through the side door into his private office. As the door clicked shut, The other bankers and customers finally exhaled, exchanging shocked glances. Was that really Keanu Reeves? Did you see that banker's face when he checked the balance? That guy just ruined his entire career in under 10 minutes. Some customers, the ones who had quietly laughed at Keanu earlier, now looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting on their feet as if ashamed of their own judgment. One of the tellers who had giggled when Ryan mocked Keanu suddenly wasn't smiling anymore. The moment had changed everything. Ryan stood stiffly in front of the manager's polished mahogany desk. The older man leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled as he studied the banker before him. For the first time since Ryan had started working here, he felt like a child being scolded by a parent. The manager finally spoke. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Ryan's throat was so dry he could barely swallow. "Sir, you insulted one of the wealthiest clients this bank has ever had." Ryan flinched. The manager's voice wasn't angry, it was worse. It was disappointed. "And not only did you humiliate him," the manager continued, "you did it in front of staff, high-profile customers, and let's not forget security cameras that record everything." Ryan's stomach twisted. He hadn't even thought about the cameras. "This will go viral," the manager added, rubbing his temples. "Do you realize what happens when someone like Keanu Reeves is publicly humiliated in a bank like ours?" Ryan said nothing because the answer was obvious. It would be a disaster, and he would be the face of that disaster. The manager reached for his phone. Ryan's heart pounded. "Who are you calling?" "Corporate." Ryan's breath hitched. The next words the manager spoke into the phone confirmed his worst fear. "Yes, I need a PR crisis team in my office immediately." A PR crisis team? The realization hit Ryan like a freight train. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a simple apology. This was bigger than him now. The bank's entire reputation was at stake, and his job, gone. Keanu Reeves walked down the sidewalk, his pace steady, his expression unchanged. To anyone passing by, he looked just like any other man going about his day. They had no idea that he had just shaken an entire institution to its core. He reached a quiet corner and stopped, taking a deep breath. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. He had experienced things like this his whole life. People who judged others by their appearance. People who treated status and money as the only things that mattered. But today, he had made sure that lesson would never be forgotten. And as he glanced back at the bank one last time, he knew things inside would never be the same again. And while the doors of the bank remained open, the truth was clear. No one inside would ever look at a simple man the same way again. The fallout from the confrontation inside the bank had already begun. Keanu Reeves had walked out of the building calmly, but the storm he left behind was only just beginning to rage. Inside the bank, tension was at an all-time high. Employees whispered among themselves. The manager was locked in his office with the PR team. Customers who had witnessed the humiliation of Ryan exchanged looks, some murmuring about what had just transpired. And Ryan, he sat at his desk, staring blankly at his hands. His career was over, and he knew it. The corporate PR team had arrived within an hour. A woman in a navy blue suit, sharp, focused, no nonsense, sat across from the manager, typing notes furiously on her tablet. Her name was Rebecca Carter, the bank's top crisis management expert. She had handled celebrity scandals, insider trading leaks, and stock market crashes. But this was bad. She sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. "So, let me get this straight," she glanced at Ryan, who refused to meet her eyes. "A teller at one of our most prestigious branches just humiliated Keanu Reeves, one of the most well-respected, beloved, and wealthiest celebrities in the world, in front of an audience?" The manager nodded grimly. Rebecca exhaled slowly. "All right, what do we know about external exposure?" The manager hesitated, then he slid his phone across the desk. Rebecca picked it up, and there it was. A video, already circulating on social media, already getting views, already going viral. The caption, "Bank teller mocks Keanu Reeves, instantly regrets it." Rebecca's jaw clenched. "We're already too late." Keanu Reeves sat in a quiet cafe a few blocks away from the bank, sipping a simple black coffee. His phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages, calls, emails. His team had seen the video. His agent had texted, "Keanu, we need to talk now." His PR manager, "This thing is blowing up, you okay?" Even his closest friends had started reaching out. "Dude, you just broke the internet." Keanu sighed. He hadn't expected this level of attention. All he had wanted was to withdraw some money. Instead, he had just become the center of an online sensation. He scrolled through his feed. The video was everywhere. Millions of people had already watched it. Thousands were commenting, furious at how he had been treated. Some were furious at Ryan. This banker needs to be fired immediately. Imagine disrespecting Keanu Reeves of all people. This is exactly why you treat everyone with respect. Others were just shocked at the bank's behavior. So, if you don't wear designer suits, you get treated like dirt? I can't believe this still happens in 2025. This video is an important lesson for all businesses. Treat people right. Keanu shook his head. He hadn't asked for this, but now that it had happened, he knew he had to decide what to do next. Inside the bank's corporate headquarters, phones were ringing nonstop. Calls from journalists, calls from clients threatening to withdraw their accounts, calls from executives demanding answers. Rebecca, the PR crisis expert, was now standing in front of a conference room full of executives, delivering a plan. We have two options. She clicked a button on the screen behind her, displaying two choices. One, ignore it, hope the scandal dies down. Two, apologize immediately, publicly, sincerely. The CEO frowned. How bad is it? Rebecca turned to face him. Sir, we're trending #1 worldwide. If we don't act fast, this will damage our brand permanently. The room went silent. The CEO took a deep breath. Prepare a statement. Rebecca nodded. She already knew exactly what it needed to say. Within hours, the bank released an official statement on all platforms. Statement regarding the incident involving Mr. Keanu Reeves. We are committed to treating every client with dignity and respect. We deeply regret the incident that took place at our downtown branch involving Mr. Keanu Reeves. The behavior exhibited does not reflect our values, and we are taking immediate steps to address it. We have reached out to Mr. Reeves personally to express our sincerest apologies, and we will be implementing new training protocols to ensure this never happens again. To all our customers and to Mr. Reeves, please accept our deepest apologies. The response was swift and overwhelming. Some people accepted the apology, others weren't convinced. Nice words, but what are you actually doing about it? Fire the banker, or this means nothing. Let's see if they actually change their policies. But the real question remained, would Keanu Reeves respond? For a full day, Keanu remained silent. The internet exploded with speculation. Would he sue? Would he accept the apology? Would he call for the banker to be fired? Then, finally, Keanu Reeves posted on his official account. Keanu Reeves, a lesson in respect. I've spent my life believing that you should treat everyone with kindness, whether they wear a suit or a t-shirt. What happened at the bank is something that happens to people all the time. Not everyone has the luxury of being recognized, and not everyone is treated with respect. I hope that this moment serves as a reminder to businesses, to individuals, to everyone. Kindness costs nothing. 1 month later, Keanu walked into a different bank. He was dressed exactly the same way. A simple black t-shirt, worn-out jeans, and his signature faded cap. He approached the counter. The teller, a young man, looked up at him and, instead of judging him, he smiled. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today? Keanu returned the smile because he knew that moment in the bank had changed things. Maybe not the entire world, but enough. And in the end, it wasn't money that had made a difference that day. It was respect.